All right, so for this lab, and this lab will be very similar to your assignment as well. So for this lab, what we want to do is read in student scores, convert each one of those scores into a grade, and print it all back. All right. We also want to find the maximum score and the average score. So we'll have a couple of methods to do that because those are very specific tasks that we don't need to clutter our main with. So our first step is to prompt the user for the number of students, right? And I want your prompt to look like this. Enter the number of students, okay? Then the user will type in the number of students, and you'll read that here in step 2. Read in the number of students into a variable. Step 3 will be to create an integer scores array of size number of students. So whatever that number of students is you read in, I want you to make an integer array called scores of that size. Next, you need to prompt the user for the individual scores. Now I want your prompt to look like this. Enter whatever that number is that they typed in, scores, okay? And you see this next step, this will be a loop. We're gonna just create a loop and set our individual indexes and our scores equal to the number we read in inside this loop. So what does that code look like? So here's the loop, loop through the array, set each array index equal to scores to the score, the score, read in from console. So your code will look like this. Scores at index I, right, which is your index from your loop, or whatever you want to call that integer, equals input, if that's your scanner name, dot next int. That's what your code will look like, okay? When you read in one number from the console, set your scores at index I equal to that number. So the first time we go through this loop, that number will equal 40. The next time, 55. The next time, 70. Last time, 58. Each time we do that loop, we're updating our index by 1. So index 0 will equal 40. Index 1 will equal 55. Index 2 will equal 70. And index 3 will equal 58. All right. Next, we create a method that calculates the average of all those scores. So you have to do the average equation. I've given you that a couple of times. Then we create a method that finds the max. I've given you that a couple of times as well. Where each time we're passing in our scores array, right, which is our array of all the student scores, and we're going to use that to calculate the average and find the max. Next, we have a method that converts an individual score, so for example, 55, into a letter grade. Or it can be a 95, it converts that to a letter grade, and it returns that grade. And then lastly, we create a method that displays all of this stuff, right? So if we look at this, we create a loop to loop through our array and print each student's score individually. So the first time we go through this array, we're going to be at student 0. Score is, then we go to our scores array at index 0, and grade is, then we convert that student's score into a grade. And that's what this convert score, passing in our current student 0 score into our method, and it's going to return whatever letter grade that is, and we're going to print that out. Lastly, we're going to print out the highest score is, calling our method find max, passing in our scores array. And the final step will be the average score is, call our calculate average method, passing in our full scores array again. All right. Let that sit right there for a little bit. And then the last and final step will be to actually call our display scores method in our main, passing in the scores array that we create up here, and we set the values right here. Okay. Any questions